Welcome to MasterMind Minutes, the podcast that focuses on the franchise industry. We'll cover topics that are important to franchisees as well as franchisors and share interesting insights that will help you build your business. We have one guest, we ask one question, and we do this in minutes, not hours. Hello again, and welcome to another edition of MasterMind Minutes. My name is Gary Grosso. I'm the founder of Franchise Growth Solutions and the publisher of FranchiseMoneymaker.com. MasterMind Minutes is a very simple concept, very quick podcast, lasts about 15, maybe 20 minutes, 25 if we really get into it. But it's a simple concept. We have one guest, we have one topic or one question, and we get through it, as I said, in minutes, not hours. Of course, we understand that you may want more information. So at the end of the program, we'll give you direct information, direct contact information for our guest. And our guest today, by the way, has a great first name. His name is Gary Montalvo. And he's a leadership and business coach who's been the powerhouse behind the strategies and leadership with startups, solopreneurs, emerging brands, and even larger corporations. And he's been doing that for about 2 decades now. I know he looks really young. Most recently, he worked with LimeLife by Alcone. Hopefully I pronounced that correctly. And he was the chief growth officer where he worked on sales and recruitment strategies for the company on a global level. He's known for his straightforward yet compassionate manner. He delivers practical and very actionable follow-through that supports people in bridging the gap between where they are now and where they'd like to be. He is also the host of the Ownership podcast, which runs on Tuesdays. He'll tell us about that. So, Gary, thank you very much for being here with us today. I appreciate it. I'm looking forward to this. I remember on our briefing call, we sort of hit on a lot of similar cylinders, if you will. Tell us a little bit more about you and about Gary Montalvo coaching, and then we'll get into the question.
You did a pretty good job. I think there's 2 lanes that I work on, 3 if you include speaking. But with the emerging brands, I really work on supporting them and bringing leadership mindset to what they do. Most entrepreneurs get into the game because they have an idea, they have a skill set, they have a passion for something. Then they get in and they realize, I'm like, oh, making cupcakes is just like 10% of this. There's a lot of other stuff that I have to figure out. And a lot of that stuff we weren't really prepared for. We weren't really trained on. We weren't really we didn't have experience growing up. And so I really support people in bringing their leadership mindset to all those areas so that they're leading their business and not the other way around. And then with larger teams and companies, I go in and help with culture, build teams, leaderships, and again, we earn these leadership positions by working hard. And then we realize that it's like, oh, wait, working hard is one aspect of it, but I also have to learn how to communicate. I have to learn how to create agreement. I have to learn how to navigate through uncomfortable situations and develop self-awareness. That's something that we live in such a reactionary world now that a lot of us aren't even present a lot. So just developing the process of reflecting is an important part of leadership. So yeah, it's a little bit about me. I've been doing it for 20 years, and I'm really passionate about working with entrepreneurs because they don't keep it to themselves. When entrepreneurs are about ripple effect. So for me, selfishly, when I work with an entrepreneur, I know that I'm working with their families, I'm working with their customers and clients, I'm working with their communities, and the massive impact is just something I'm really passionate about. So thank you for having me on the show, Gary. I'm really excited. I appreciate you.
Well, no, I'm glad to get into this, and I will tell you, when you talk about people getting involved in a business and then they're focused. We have a lot of restaurant clients, so a lot of our clients, the founders are sometimes they're chefs, and worst person to run a restaurant or own a restaurant or build a restaurant is a chef. I know it sounds weird, but the reason is because they focus on the center of the plate and they lose
Yeah,
sight of everything else around them. To your opening
makes perfect sense.
There's a great book by sort of my mentor in print, a guy named Michael Gerber. He wrote a book called The E-Myth Revisited, and it's
Hmm.
and it's
Yeah, right.
all about that, and it's challenging for especially entrepreneurs because they're sort of set in their ways, and they can do it all. And you're an entrepreneur, I'm an entrepreneur. We know how that feels. Fortunately for myself, I was able to get beat up enough early in life that I sort of learned,
Hmm.
hey, you can't do it that way. So let's kind of get into the question because you know we talked before the program, I'm going to say 15, 20 years ago, the idea of having a coach. I mean, a lot of people, especially sort of, I'm in the boomer generation, so we were like, who needs a coach? Or what are you talking about a coach? Or maybe we never even heard of a business coach. Like we didn't even think about it. And as we were talking earlier, I said, well, Peyton Manning had a football coach, and Aaron Judge of the Yankees has a batting coach. So why
Yeah,
shouldn't business people have a coach to help them get better and learn leadership skills? So for me, and you mentioned about emerging brands, I guess the question here really is when you're working with a startup or how do you see, let me rephrase this. How do you
yeah,
see the benefits for a startup or an emerging brand, the founder of a company? How do you see them benefiting from having a business coach, a leadership coach, and when should they actually think about having one?
yeah. So I think anytime the stakes are high, you should be getting coached, right? Like anytime in your life or business, the stakes are really high, you should have someone who can help you see the blind spots, who can help you see if you're on track. Someone who can help you leverage their expertise to help you get there faster, with more effectiveness and less bruising, right? Um, here's the thing. When I say leadership coaching, a lot of entrepreneurs kind of go, oh, they just tune out because they're like, oh, I don't have a team, or I don't have to worry about that right now, or it's just me and my assistant, or it's just me and my two people, like, you know, and I'm really passionate about self leadership. And it's much harder to lead yourself than it is to lead other people. And leading yourself, your self leadership is the things that get you through the difficult challenges. Self leadership is the thing that gets you through the uncertainty, through the failures that you're going to have. You're going to have them. You can't avoid them, right? Leadership is what helps you integrate those failures into lessons with velocity. Leadership is what helps you start to develop the self-awareness to understand where are your weaknesses, right? Where are the points where you are creating friction in your business? Sometimes you're the one that's creating the friction and you don't see that. You can't tell because it's the way that you've always done it. That it's in your blind spot. I think starting a business is like probably the best personal development you're gonna get in life. Like probably next to like kids, it is you're going to learn so much about yourself and you're going to be put through the ringer time and time again, and you're going to have just so many opportunities to really learn who you are. But you have to bring your leadership to those moments, or those moments will make you shrink. They
Mhm.
will throw you off course. They will set you back. They could be the best thing that ever happened to you, or it could be the worst thing that ever happened to you. And leadership and your relationship to your leadership is what determines whether that's the best thing that ever happened to you or the worst thing that ever happened to you.
Yeah, yeah,
You
I can
know.
see that. Yeah, I can see that.
Yeah.
It's interesting because I'll tell you, I currently don't have a coach. I did, but I have associates, many of whom I've worked with for many years, and they know me, and we're very close. And they'll
Yeah.
smack me.
Yeah.
They're sort of my vendors or my associates. Like I'm
Yeah.
I'm the one writing the check, but they are comfortable enough with me to smack me. They'll say, "Hey, stop beating your chest," or you should.
Yeah.
Don't think about this. Maybe you want to try and think about it this way. But again, as you say, as an entrepreneur, we have weaknesses. We create friction, and I'm guilty as charged. I create a lot of friction in my company. I think sometimes entrepreneurs, though, What they do is they walk in the room and flip the table and drive everybody crazy, but that's sort of how you get to the next level. So how do some of the folks that you're coaching, in particular founders, because I'm sure you coach CEOs and C-suite people, but founders of companies, how do they take to the idea of having a
Hmm.
discussion about their weaknesses or their friction? Because a lot of these, I'm going to say guys because it's mostly guys, a lot of these guys have egos and you
Yeah.
got to sort of work around that. So how do you approach that and get them to actually listen?
Yeah. So, I mean, I'll be honest, I don't get a lot of that because if you're hiring me and you're bringing me on, you have to be open to what it is, the process, right? So if you're engaging and you're bringing in a coach or and you're making that investment and you're open to the process. Now, I will say, of course, we're human. So there are times in every relationship where somebody hears something that causes, feelings. Um, I am someone who's pretty masterful. I think you and I share this. Like, I'm a straight shooter. And I have this ability to hit you over the head with a 2x4, but you know that it comes from a place of love and from a place of me standing for you, right?
Absolutely. I
But I'm
love
going to hit you
it.
over the head with a 2x4 because that's what you need to hear, right? If somebody pushes back, then the conversation becomes, okay, do you want to be right? Or do you want to have a different, or do you want to discover something new? The moment that you're right, there's nothing else to talk about,
Yeah,
right? So
right
do you
on.
want to have a conversation about being right, or do you want to discover I'm not invested in being right at any point, but I am invested in having a different conversation and poking holes,
Hmm.
right? The moment that you're right, then well, then what's my role here? Then what is it that that you want out of this? So usually people, I'm pretty skillful at getting people through those moments. I don't get a lot of that. But if you are someone who finds themselves pushing back a lot, I think you have to do some. That's just where that moment of reflection comes in. We have to. Part of being a leader is you have to pause and reflect. You have to pause and take inventory. You have to pause and be able to say, "Hey, was that the best way that I handled that? What could open up if I took a different point of view?" Like you have to be able to have those conversations because the moment you are not willing to do that, then your ability to create is only going to be limited by what you know. And I'm sorry, brother, but you don't know everything.
Right.
Nobody does.
Yep. Well,
You know what I mean?
let's break this apart a little bit
Yeah.
because I'm conflicted in a couple of things that you said. I'll say I
Okay.
agree with most of it. I'm not pushing back and I'm not looking to be
No,
right.
no.
Okay.
I love this. Let's go.
Uh,
Let's play.
so I guess the first thing that comes to my mind, and I forget where I heard it, but when the framers were in the room in Philadelphia working out the Constitution, someone said the whole damn country started on an argument. They were all
Hmm.
pushing back on one another, and I don't think anybody would
Hmm.
question any of their leadership skills or abilities. So, for me, I'm with you. I'm never afraid to lose a client to the truth, so to speak. So I'll
Hmm.
always tell it as it is.
Hmm.
However, in there's a thin line, and maybe it's not so thin. Okay, there's a thin line because I'm often accused at times of digging in to be right when I'm not digging in to be right. I'm digging in to do two things. Number one, get to the truth,
Hmm.
or create an environment of stimulated thinking
Hmm.
where it's not about doing it my way or being right, but it's almost, I'm going to use the word, and maybe you would tell me don't do that. It's almost like prompting, pushing, antagonizing the room into a
Hmm.
thought mode where now everybody is pushing back on everyone else. Now, that can only go on for so long before you have to settle it, but are
Hmm.
you saying that is what you mean when you say about being right, or are there other ways? Because like I said, there's a thin line between constructive debate and wanting to be right. How do you see that?
No, what you're talking about is a healthy brainstorming session. What you're talking about is let's poke holes on this. Let's challenge the notions of what we're thinking about for the purpose of exploring if we can arrive at a different place. So that's completely different than someone just being right and only being open to their point of view.
Yeah.
If someone's just open to their point of view, they're probably not going to engage in a dialogue. Now, if you're just poking hole, if you're just pushing back and you're not listening to what your team is saying, what the other members are saying, if you're not listening to some of the feedback that you're getting from the people around you, and listen, ultimately, you have to go with what your gut is telling you, and because you're the person who's signing the checks and you're the person that is, leading this charge. But in that environment, you want to be open to different points of views and authentically engage in that conversation. It's okay to end up with your point of view again. I think what you're talking about is great. Now, if now I will say if you're leaving people with the experience that you're doing that for the sake of I forgot how you phrased it, but you said you were accused of like
Uh,
just pushing
yeah,
back for the
just
sake of
digging
pushing
in for
back or
the
something.
yeah, just digging in for the sake of again of sort of being right or hey, my way or the highway
Yeah,
here. Because to me
yeah.
that's not healthy debate. That's just being stubborn. And I guess where being closed-minded, being stubborn. I have an expression. Oh, he knows one more page than the book. So you
Mm-hmm.
can't have a discussion
Mm-hmm.
with somebody that thinks they know one more page than the
Yeah.
book.
Yeah.
Okay.
100%.
Yeah. So,
Yeah.
and I know we're aligned on that, and I agree. I think when there's a debate back and forth, when people are listening with the intent to hear, not the intent to reply, and there's actually a conversation going on, that's where new ideas come from.
Yeah.
It comes from that
It
debate.
it and you said something I just want to highlight that I think is really great. You said that one of your intentions is because you want people to come to the table with their own ideas and being able to defend and challenge the ideas. That's a great um that's great for a team. Those are distinctions and ways of being that you want present in a team. What you don't want in a team is just like, here, tell me what you want me to do, right? So
Mhm.
what you're training people to do there is to come have conviction in their ideas. So I love that. Now, if people are feeling like the exercise is just for the sake of being contrarian, then I would say there's something you want to do in the way that you frame that exercise for people so that they understand that this is actually, you're not just being an asshole. You're just actually like, hey guys, for the next 30 minutes, I want to debate this. For the next 30 minutes, I want you all to come and challenge this and bring new ideas because number one, I want you all to have this training and this experience. And number two, I just want to explore whether this is actually the best idea, right? Well, now they understand that, oh, Gary's not being a jerk right now and pushing back and just trying to stir the pot. He's actually, this is part of his process. And so they engage in a different way, right? There might be a little creating context for them is how I call it, right? Like a
Yeah.
free frame
Yeah.
that may allow them to participate in a different way.
Yeah.
But I
And
love that. I think
I,
it's great.
I'm glad to hear you say that because for me, that is where, you know, the ideas come from. But I think the leader of the band, so to speak, has to create an environment where folks are comfortable to challenge the boss. Okay, when I was running I actually had a job. I had a couple of jobs in my life, but my last job, we'd get in a conference room, with the team, and sometimes, certainly some of the more junior folks would be intimidated by the C-suite people and they wouldn't speak up. And our job was to sort of, I don't know, kind of loosen the crowd. I don't know how to
Yeah.
describe it. Just to, so when you're coaching, how do you get into that idea where another part of leadership is bringing people along and making them feel comfortable enough to voice their ideas.
Yeah, I love that. So you, and this is, I'm so glad you asked that question because one of the things that can happen when you're in startup launch mode is that you get very task oriented. And so getting the job done becomes a priority. And so what that can mean is that you can rush through things. You can just like, we got that, okay, go. And then you move on to the next thing. So when you're also looking to develop culture and leadership, you kind of have to pause and add a few extra steps. So you may have the answer, you may have a place that you already want to arrive in, but you take a moment and say, okay, what is everyone thinking? Let's spend the next 10 minutes brainstorming some solutions here. What are you seeing? Like you want to get buy-in from other people, especially the ones that haven't stepped up. Even say, "Hey, Gary, what do you think? I haven't heard from you yet." Right? You're letting them know what you think is important to me. I expect you to share in a meeting, right? Without like pointing and doing all the things. You have to build it into your process, into your agenda, for example. Point number three, get feedback from the team,
Hmm.
right? Now, those are the types of things that it takes an extra 15 minutes in a meeting, but it starts to let people know, okay, I can share my thoughts. He wants to hear what I have to say, right? They're actually taking a moment to ask me what I have to say, right? And it doesn't mean that you're going to take in everything that is given, but that there is an environment of like your ideas are shared. No idea is a bad idea,
Yep.
right?
Yep. No,
Um,
I agree. How do you know it's working? Like from your own point of view, like how do you know you're getting through? What do you look for in terms of actionable results from your client so that you can,
yeah,
even if it's a function of only your self-fulfillment, like how do you know that you've been effective? And again, I realize a lot of it has to do with the client. Like I have this saying, I tell people often, people mistake. This is a mistake I think that people make. They think knowledge is power. And I tell people, no, that's bullshit. Okay. Knowledge is not power. It's the execution of knowledge that's actually the power. So if you're giving someone knowledge and they're not executing, obviously goes nowhere. So how do you know, like, okay, I'm getting through. This is working. I'm helping this person. Like, how do you know that?
yeah. It's such a good question. The only way you know that is if you've created a game plan, goals that you can measure up against. That's the only way. Often when I come in, there aren't real clear, like, how do you measure culture unless you've created an idea of what you want that culture to be and how you want that culture expressed? So that's the first thing. You have to create the game, whether it's through sales, whether it's through the actions you want people to take, whether it's through when I'm working with someone, it's more obvious to see because one of the first things we do is sit down after we do a discovery process. Part of that is like 6 years from now, what if you're looking back, what do you want to have happen, right? Like how would this exchange be valuable for you? What would you have created?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And then you create, milestones along the way. Typically, you know, what those look like for me, usually when I'm working with somebody, it's some of them are hard skills, hard things like sales numbers go up, productivity goes up in whatever way we choose to measure that. And some of them are a little bit more subtle. It's like, oh, the team's not staying as late anymore. Oh, there's less friction between this leader and his team. Oh, now these teams they're having different types of conversations now. Those are a little bit trickier to measure, but
Mm-hmm.
it's also very measurable if you just create a process for it.
Yeah.
But the point is, in all of that is you have to sit down and figure out what does a win look like. And if you don't sit down, and this is an area where our listeners maybe skip over. You will sit down and you do the planning on what sales looks like or what marketing looks like, but you're not doing the planning on what your people development looks like.
Hmm.
Where do you should always have a plan for where do you want your team to be 6 months, a year from now? What new responsibilities do you want them to take? How do you want, when you're sitting in front of somebody, how do I want this person to grow in the next 6 months? Where do I need them to be in order to fill a future role that I see for them or in order to fill a gap that already exists? If you don't do that work, then you can't measure, if
Yeah.
that makes sense.
No, it makes perfectly good sense. And, I guess I want to emphasize something we spoke about earlier. That team could be as simple or as small as the person in the mirror. It doesn't
Mm-hmm.
necessarily have to be 10
Mm-hmm.
people. It could be just
Yeah.
one person. So, I guess I would also want to know, like, are they telling you, like, are they feeling it? When does a client say to you, "Hey, you know what? I'm glad we talked about that because I put that into practice, and this is what." Are they giving you feedback where they themselves are now saying it's not just you noticing the change, but they're noticing the change?
100%. 100%. Now you have to create those. See, the thing about coaching is, again, we don't really do a lot of reflection.
Hmm.
We're plugged into devices, we're stimulated all the time. It's very rare that we have these moments unless you have a journaling practice or a practice where like once a week you sit and reflect. The thing about coaching is that you're taking a slice of time every week to sit down and reflect. And part of what we do is review the things you said you were going to do, review the things that are working, review the things that are still not working. But if it's, I mean, that's my favorite. That's my best day when somebody comes in. Oh my God, that thing we talked about. I went in and I did it, and I had that conversation. And I thought that they were going to push back, but they were really excited actually now that because sometimes my favorite thing to do is help people reframe how they talk to their team. Because sometimes you think that a conversation is going to be scary. Sometimes you think that accountable, holding your team accountable has to be a scary, heavy thing. But if you do it from a place of like, I want you to win, if you do it from a place of I care about you and I'm helping you develop and I'm helping you grow, if you do it from a place of like I'm standing for you to be the best version of yourself that's possible, then those conversations become fun, and they become exciting. And when people know that, oh, you're taking me to the mat right now because you actually see something in me, as opposed to, oh, you're taking me to the mat because you're annoyed with
Yeah.
me and you're annoyed that you have to have this conversation with me. Those are two different experiences. And
Yeah.
when people know that you care about them and that you believe in them, they will run off a cliff for you,
Yeah,
right?
no,
Like,
I agree. And again, I mean, we're not perfect. We're not perfect beings, and I will tell you that sometimes I definitely fall into that trap where I'm not cognizant of my tone. I'm cognizant of my
yeah,
words,
yeah,
but
yeah,
I'm not
yeah,
cognizant of my tone or where you put an accent sort of in the sentence. And
yeah, yeah,
1,000 years ago, I'll bore you for 2 minutes now. Just
yeah.
1,000 years
I love it.
ago, I was in the radio business. And one of the exercises that I was taught by a mentor, was how you emphasize words in a sentence. And he used this
Hmm.
example. He used this example. I didn't say he stole the cat. Okay. I didn't say he stole the cat. And if you say, I didn't say he stole the cat, you did. I didn't say he stole the cat. I didn't say he stole the cat. I didn't say he sold the cat. She did. Okay. I didn't say he stole the cat. There were a lot of cats. I didn't say he stole the cat. He stole the dog. So where you sort of position that can set
Hmm.
the tone. in a meeting. And I will tell you,
Yeah,
I'm listen, I'm not perfect. I'm guilty. I guess we all are at times because if we let that emotion kind of drip in and then you're going and you're trying to, I think, what did you say? Bring someone to the mat. That's like a great term. But you want to coach them, you want to show them, you want to teach them, you do want to stand up for them, you do love them, you do want them to do better. But at that moment, it could be like a parent who drags their kid out of the middle of the street because they're afraid they're going to get hit by a car, and they're not
yeah,
necessarily speaking in a loving tone.
yeah,
So
yeah.
I,
I got a
I
great tip for you.
go ahead. I'll take it.
So a great so the way I coach people to handle those moments is before you start, you create the commitment for the conversation. So I'm having this conversation with you, Gary, right now because I see a bright future for you in this company. You're an important part of this team, and I wanna and I really believe that you could have, just the sky's the limit for you here. Okay. And if we're gonna reach that, one of the things that we need to address is your lateness,
Right, yeah.
right? So now you've just so that does two things. Number one, it creates the way that person is now listening to this conversation,
Yeah, pre-frames it.
right? You
Yep.
say, you listen to this conversation inside of the commitment that I have for you and the future that I have for you, right? It also reminds you of why you're having this conversation because you're a human being. And this is one more thing in your list of things to do. And not only that, really, do I have to talk to you about lateness? Come on, that's like one-on-one basic stuff. But it's really easy to get annoyed. It's really easy to have a sharpness in there. But if you take a moment to create the commitment for yourself and for them, well, now you go, listen, yes, this is annoying, but at the end of the day, what I'm really committed to is that Gary feels empowered here and that Gary wins. And sometimes when you have those conversations, like, you know what, Gary, I have been struggling with being on time. They changed my kid's schedule, and now it's like every morning has been stressful and I haven't figured it out. Okay. Would coming in half an hour later and leaving half an hour later work for you? Oh my God, that would be amazing. Okay, well, I think we can make that happen. Let's just talk to Bob and see if that works. And now you have your employee back in integrity. You made a slight tweak that didn't really impact the process. And now they know that you have their back. And now you're not listening to them as like, oh, this person's a mess. And it addresses the whole thing. But when we only react out of our annoyance, out of our reaction, out of like, then all those opportunities get missed.
Yeah.
So that's to me, that's one of the most powerful tools for creating the context for those conversations and how people listen to them.
No,
Just
I love
just
it. I love it. I'm going to direct a couple people I know to listen to this podcast specifically. So leave us with a final thought on the topic of, benefits of coaching and leadership coaching, business coaching, and then
yeah.
we'll talk about how we get in touch with you. But just give us a last thought on this.
Yeah. I think what I'll say is that, there's a myth that we should know how to do this stuff. And there's like, one of the ways that we're not really taught leadership. We're not really taught how to like manage other people. Like those are things that come through experience. But very often when we start this journey, we think, oh, I should know how to sell. Oh, I should know. There's something wrong with me that I don't know how to do that. There's something wrong with me that I don't. No, it's a skill that you have to learn just like any other. Some of us have a natural talent in some areas and natural weaknesses in other areas. So if this is one of the areas where it's a weakness for you, you can absolutely develop it, but you have to create a structure to develop it, meaning you have to put yourself in some kind of structure. You have to create goals that there's accountability in. You have to have a coach holding you accountable. You have to do some kind of process that holds the guardrails. Doing it by yourself is very difficult because you can't see your own blind spots. It's not impossible. It's just much more difficult and it takes longer. So, don't approach this from, oh, what's wrong with me? Approach it from like, how can I learn that thing that I want to be stronger in that area.
Yeah.
How can I learn that? You know, you may already have people in your life that can support you, like Gary shared. He has a team of people that hold him accountable and are not afraid to smack him around. That's rare. Not everybody has that because when personal relationships are in the mix, it's hard to smack each other around without, but if you can create that, then that might
Yeah.
work for you.
Yeah, no, we
Um,
I hear you, and we are able to do that. And you're right. It is rare only because you don't know the authenticity behind
yeah,
it. So
yeah,
that's another conversation. So and we have to have you back because this is just I love this topic and I love because this is how people propel themselves to the next level.
yeah.
You're basically fueling that growth, and I think that's really important. So if someone wants to reach out to you, learn more about it, or perhaps they want you to coach them, like how do they
Yeah.
get in touch with you? What's the best way?
Yeah, GaryMontalvo.com is my website. Gary at GaryMontalvo.com is my email. I'm very Googleable. You just, use Gary Montalvo, you'll find me in all the places.
You said you're Googleable? Is that
Googleable. Yeah, I'm
Googleable?
very
Okay,
Googleable.
I'm going to add that to my dictionary of IDK. I don't know, and all these other things that are going on.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But yeah, we'll definitely have you back. And again, folks, for those of you listening or watching, we will embed the email address and the link to the website in the bio of the program, so you don't need to run around and write that down. You'll be able to reach Gary at the click of a button. So hey, brother, thank you so much for being with us today. This was really, really good stuff. I really appreciate you
Yes.
taking the time to
Thank
be with
you.
us.
Thank you. It's my pleasure. Hosting my own podcast, I know what a big deal it is when you bring on guests and you do all the work that it takes. People think this stuff looks easy. It's a lot of work. You've already put hours preparing for this interview, so I just really appreciate it, and I
No.
hope that I provided some value for the
Oh, you
listeners.
absolutely did. Thank you very much. We'll see you soon.
All right. Thank you.
Bye.